Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hi, I'm Sal from All Sorts Dog Training. Welcome to our webinar on muzzle training. We'll just wait for a few of you to come through. There's lots of people registered before we start, and I'll just make sure that there's plenty of you come through. This is Luna, who's she's about a 6-year-old heading dog. Who'll be helping me today to talk to you and show you about muzzle training so that you guys will get a better idea of what to do. So just firstly, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Estelle Lation. I've been working with dogs for the last 20 years, predominantly in animal rescue whilst I was in the UK, working with cases in the UK and rehoming at Baskerville Dogs Home. From there, actually, I've gone on to compete with dogs of my own in various disciplines, but my main passion was search and rescue. So I tended to qualify with my dogs for search and rescue work and then train other dogs for search and rescue. So my goal is to help educate owners how to get the best relationship with their dogs. And today is something really important, which is all about muzzle training. And I felt this was really important because as you can see Luna here, she's a beautiful dog. We're out on a walk and recently she got attacked by a dog, and that dog did some damage to the back of her neck. Now, had that dog been wearing a muzzle, we could have avoided the whole incident, and Luna would have been injured, and that dog wouldn't have had to be called to the council about. So we need to make sure that people understand what's the purpose of muzzling, why we muzzle, how beneficial it can be, and really what are the best methods to build a willing dog to put that muzzle on. It's interesting to me, you know, how people feel about muzzles and the interpretation of what a muzzle might construe to other people. Human behavior comes into this an awful lot. But actually, my job today is to not just show you how to muzzle train, but also how easy it is to muzzle train and how beneficial for you and your dog it can be to muzzle train your dog. The classic misconception is that, you know, you put a muzzle on a dog that is essentially, you know, going to be aggressive, but actually that's not the case. A lot of people muzzle dogs for a lot of different reasons. It can be something like the dog scavenges and it keeps going to the vet because it keeps picking stuff up. So out on a walk, they'll put a muzzle on the dog to stop it scavenging so it doesn't swallow items and have to keep going to the vet. It could be that, you know, it's trained for dock work, you know, Department of Conservation work, and it's to save, you know, any predatory behavior on any animals they don't want. We don't think differently about, you know, a dog like a greyhound. You know, they wear muzzles when they're not racing, yet people don't seem to have an issue with a greyhound sort of wearing a muzzle. It's almost expected. If anything, when I started my career in greyhound racing kennels right at the beginning, you know, the dogs loved the muzzles. The muzzles meant that they were going to go out and going to go race. So what's super important here is trying to remove that bit of stigma about muzzles, and essentially just making sure that we're doing it in a way where we're not forcing muzzles on dogs. I personally believe that dogs should be, you know, muzzled, even if they're a pet dog and you've never had a problem. The reason being is I've experienced, even with my own dogs, that they can be the most sweet-natured dogs, but if they're in pain and I have to take them to the vet, they can behave out of character in that moment. So it's really important that we make sure that essentially we're doing it for the benefit of the dogs, the safety of the dogs, to prevent any issues arising, and safety of others around us, whether that's your vet, other people, other dogs. It really doesn't matter. I do believe that we should muzzle train all dogs because there may come a time in their life that you need to muzzle train. Now, joining me today behind the scenes is also Brooke. She is here just helping me with the technical side of things. Obviously, I'm not so technical. I'm very good at training dogs, but working with sort of live webinars is not my forte. So she's here. I'm just going to quickly ask her. Brooke, can you see any of the questions coming up? Is there anything I need to answer? So guys, can you see? Can you guys all see me? Are there any other issues? Is there anybody else? Somebody else might not be able to see me for a different reason. Majority of people can see me, I believe. Yeah, what are they saying? Can anybody see? Can you just? So a few people can see us. Yeah. Ah, so you can't join on your phone. Okay, so that's where you're having the issue, is getting it through on your phone. Oh no, a few people are getting the phone. Does the dog know they can't bite, so they don't try? That's an unusual question. Okay, that kind of relates to what I call bite inhibition, which is a little bit different whether you can teach a dog true bite inhibition or not. I don't know about you, but I can be a pretty easygoing person, but if I'm in pain, I can lose my temper. I think, remember, dogs convey how they feel through growling and biting if they're really in distress. So it's my belief that any dog can bite. In essence, you can go down the route of trying to prevent that from happening, but any dog push to come to shove, if it's feeling potentially threatened at any point or in pain, then any dog can bite. So coming back to why we muzzle dogs, so there's lots of different reasons, but the predominant one for most people is you're concerned about maybe how your dog's behavior is, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this is something I need to do. Perhaps you've got a dog that doesn't like people, doesn't like other dogs. And the great news about muzzles is that really we can use them to aid other training, particularly if we want people to move away, give us space. They're a good early warning system. Brooke's got a question. Yeah. Can we start this at any age your dog is younger? But absolutely any age. Really doesn't matter what the age of the dog to start doing this. That is the great thing about this. I've trained all age groups of dogs to do this. The system is very, very simple. Yeah. No difference. So the question was, is there any difference how we train young or old? No, exactly the same. The training we're going to do today actually comes from working with more dangerous animals. So, zoo capacity type training. That's because you can't force, a tiger to do something, or, they can't keep knocking them out all the time as well to maintain these animals. So this style of training actually comes from making sure that, we're doing it in a way where the animal is presenting. Luna's just checking you guys out. Luna, come. We're doing it in a way where the animal is offering us the behaviors we want to put the muzzle on. So they're doing it in a willing way, and it's all about consent. The more we do consent with muzzle training, actually the better you're going to learn about consent in other things. So these same techniques we use for things like nail clipping, for example, or any veterinary examination or injections or anything like that. Essentially, it's part of cooperative care. Oh, Brooke's arm's in there. I don't know what she's checking. She's just checking that something's right. Okay, she's just making sure it's recording. It should auto record. Yeah, okay. So what do we need to consider? When we looking at muzzles, what do we need to think about? Because there are a lot on the market, and we need to know which ones are going to be the best shape for our dog. There's no doubt that some are safer than others, and that comfort also comes into this. So we do always need to consider the shape of your dog's head and muzzle, and making sure that we are getting, the appropriate shape. So I actually have some examples here for you today so that you can have a look. We've actually put this sheet up the back because my bookcase here is actually a bit busy, and we realise it's quite hard for you guys to see the muzzles clearly without a white background. So It's not I'm trying to really hide anything, it's just so that you guys have got a better view of things. So the most common muzzle that's out on the market are these ones. The Baskerville muzzles are probably the most popular. You find them in a lot of shops, a lot of vets. They come in a variety of sizes. They are essentially quite a rounded shape. Okay, there is a bit of flex in them. You can, squidge them together a little bit so they're not too stiff. They're made of quite a firm sort of rubber. They have obviously a strap that goes over the head, and actually when you buy them, they have another strap that goes onto the top of the muzzle and comes over the top of the head, which ensures that the dog can't hook the muzzle off, can't get their foot in and hook it off their nose as well. So depending on the severity of aggression with your dog, it depends whether you want to use that strap or not. But for early training, I kind of like to take it off to begin with, so it's not confusing, or lay it over the front of the muzzle so it's just out of the way to start with until you get confident getting the dog, putting the muzzle on and putting the straps on, the immediate straps on around the back of the head. So these Baskervilles are very popular. They're very easy to come across. And you can put food underneath through into the muzzle to feed the dog as well. There are also these types of muzzles which look similar, but they're a stiffer plastic and a slightly longer, narrower shape. I tend to find that these sort of suit more your sort of pointers, a lot of the dogs with slightly longer muzzle, this shape sort of seems to fit. And also it's a little bit bigger at the bottom. So if you've got a dog with bigger jowls, they seem to sit quite well. They actually have a soft area just on the inside here, which means that the plastic is not sitting straight onto the dog, so it's a little bit more comfortable on the muzzle. Again, these you can get in a variety of places, and even, would you believe, you can pick some of these up from choice shops, Sunnies, things like that. They're probably not the best quality, I would say. So I tend to use them for dogs where it's not a massive aggression case, where I need to have something really stiff and very, very secure. But for essentially just training them and using them maybe at the vets just occasionally, they're absolutely fine. And then we also have the metal muzzles. Now, these are really solid. A dog's not going to be able to flex that, put their teeth through it. It's pretty secure. Again, this one has that extra head strap that goes over the top of the front of the head, and then the strapping that goes around the back of the dog's head. So this one is quite substantial. Again, it has a really nice cushioning just in here, which sits onto the bridge of the dog's muzzle, and it's really comfortable for the dog. So whilst it can look a bit of a severe muzzle, it's actually quite comfortable for the dog. The load of it is spread across the muzzle of the dog. So I find a lot of dogs like this. This actually came off a Welsh Spaniel, just to give you an idea. So a Welsh Springer Spaniel had this. So again, sort of longer, more pointed nose, good drop off the bottom. We want enough access underneath so that the dogs can pant and breathe. Don't want it so tight that the dogs can't pant and breathe, but so they can access and drink through them if necessary. But we also need to be able to access them to feed. Again, Brooke's got a question. What's that? Yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard that. Can a muzzle be used to calm dogs? We need to be a little bit careful with that behavior. So if she's saying that the dog is calmer when muzzled around other dogs, we need to make sure that the dog is not suppressed. Sometimes it can look like the dog's calmer, but actually the dog can actually be a little bit shut down by having the muzzle on. It can feel like it can't do anything, it can't defend itself when this muzzle is on, so they can shut down a little bit. So we need to be very careful about how we observe that behavior to make sure that, is the muzzle a suppressant in that moment, so it's actually making the anxiety worse, it's not making them feel better about being around other dogs, or is it that you are more confident because the dog's got a muzzle on and your dog's feeding off your change in your behavior and feeling more relaxed around those dogs? But certainly I find for a lot of owners, once they get head round having a muzzle on, they relax a lot because they realize the dog can't do anything. And actually, when we work with reactive dogs a lot, I actually have to try and wean people off using muzzles in the end, because I'm like, we don't actually need to use it anymore. It's not so necessary. But the stigma around them is still that, you know, oh my God, my dog's wearing a muzzle, I'm inciting that I've got a dangerous dog. In actual fact, you know, under the Dog Control Act, it shows that you're taking all reasonable steps to make sure your dog is, you know, safe. So if a dog came up and accosted your dog, a lot of people are like, well, that's not fair. If my dog's got a muzzle on, it can't defend itself. Well, that's true. But in a court of law, you would be deemed as you've done the right thing, and perhaps the other owner would not. So your dog wouldn't end up being impounded as a result. So bear that in mind with muzzles. You know, we're doing this as a safety mechanism. There's obviously with behavioral issues, it's not just a muzzle going to resolve everything. There is perhaps behavioral modification training that needs to come with it. We can't just muzzle the dog. We might have to do other training as well to change the emotional state of the dog. But it's your first safety protocol is to muzzle train. So that's a metal one, which are really good, nice and secure and solid. There's another brand, which sadly I couldn't get hold of in time for today, which is called the Boomus. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. The Boomus muzzle, which is made of biothane. I love them because they're really snazzy colors. They really stand out, and they can be shaped to suit all different head shapes of dogs. And so from a long way away, people can really see them. But there is flex in them. So they don't tend to have many gaps between the bits of biothane, because if there's any gaps, the teeth could get through there. So it can make it a little bit more tricky for treat training with them to begin with. I tend to recommend training on one of these ones first before going to perhaps a Boomus, you know, to wear permanently. But I do prefer where you can actually still get the food in. The last type of muzzle which you'll come across is this type, which is the material. Sometimes they're mesh as well, you know, rather than a solid piece of material. These are the ones that a lot of the vets will use. They are not a long-term solution, and there's a couple of reasons for that, which is they do not allow the dog to pant or breathe or drink, or, you know, easily through them. It clamps their mouth shut. Obviously, they can breathe through their nose, but it clamps their mouth shut. So panting isn't an option for them, and they can't have a drink through it. It is only very short term. So the vets might do a very quick bit of handling and put one on a dog and then take it off. My advice is this is probably the most distressing for a dog, because they can't behave naturally in it. You know, if a dog's stressed, they want to pant, and then they can't, which makes it even more stressful for them. So if you don't muzzle train your dog and you go to a vet and they go, oh, we'll just put a muzzle on the dog and they stick one of these on, it's going to make things worse. So you're better muzzle training your dog yourself, having your own muzzle. You've done all the preliminary work, you turn up, the muzzle's on, ready to go. The vet doesn't even have to think about it, and you're using a muzzle that you know your dog is happy with and comfortable with, rather than them putting one of these on the dog. Similarly, that's a stranger putting potentially the muzzle on your dog as well, which I don't like at all. So these are any short-term solution, they're definitely not my preference. Some groomers will use them as well, and some groomers will use one that looks like a duck beak, a duck bill, which kind of comes out and curls up and down. And they'll use that, which again clamps the mouth together. Yes, okay, it stops the dog turning around to bite you, but again, they have trouble breathing and panting in those. And the problem is if you're in a groomer's where it's hot and they're getting shampooed and blow dried or cut, and it's a warm environment, that can be quite hard on the dog too. It can be quite distressing for the dog. So just, you know, remember, every dog responds to a muzzle slightly differently. Some of them, you can just put them on them and they don't even care at all. But a lot of other dogs will be very uncomfortable about the feeling of them, because it's not natural for them to have something on their face. You know, they've got to get used to it. So there's lots of pros and cons to those different muzzles. I'm going to be using the Baskerville muzzle today for training, just because I'd say it's probably the most widely available and the most popular. So I'll be using that to help you show how to use this sort of thing. Before we get to that, I'm just going to check on the timings. How are we doing on timing? We're good. Okay. So we need to talk about when we train any dog, we need to make sure that there's a system in place where the dog knows it's doing something right. There's a few different techniques with muzzle training. One of the classic ones is to smear, you know, peanut butter or something on the end of the muzzle and get the dog to put its head in and feed, or put it in these come in a box. Some people will put this into the box and put their food in it, and then the dog feeds out of it every day. That does get the dog used to the sensation of putting their head into the muzzle, but I would say it's almost falling onto the luring side of things. And the trouble is, when you lure a dog to do something, it doesn't transition away from having that food in the muzzle all the time. And that's really the goal, which is we're getting a muzzle on where there isn't going to be food at the end all the time. We want the dog to willingly put their head into it. We've got another question. What's the question, Brooke? This is not uncommon. I have a lot of reactive dogs come to me who perhaps have been muzzled in the past inappropriately, just because, you know, we've had to for their safety, and the muzzle has become quite negative. The great news is that the system we use will definitely probably not be used by your vets, so you can undo that. We can emotionally change how the dog feels about the muzzle by using the system we're going to show you. So there's a few different techniques with that, but putting the food on the end will work so far, but I find that after a while the dog may start to, you know, not be comfortable with doing it, or, you know, you rush to put the strap on whilst they're munching the food in there. So it's still not really what I call consented behavior necessarily. It's just really desensitizing them to the muzzle, but it's not creating what I call a willing response. I want my dog to actively go, could you put the muzzle on? Stick their head out and go, can you put it on me, please? And that's what we're looking for. So when we come to the training, we need to always think about, how do we tell the dog when they're getting something right? So the first thing that we do is we use what's called a marker or a bridging sound. That is a sound which indicates to the dog that whatever they did just in that moment is exactly right. And if they hear that sound, they know got it right, and we're always going to follow up with some form of reward. Now, what your dog finds rewarding can vary from dog to dog. You know, some dogs will work for the kibble, some dogs will only work for, you know, prime roast beef. If you've had a dog with a negative association with a muzzle, you may find a higher value reward is going to be necessary, something they wouldn't normally get, because they need to feel like, you know, it's worth it for them. So it's important we look at that. Play is element, you know, a play element in this is important to give dogs break between sessions. So we keep it very short too, very short and sweet. This is not hours of doing this. This is maybe a few repetitions, then giving the dog a break and doing it again. But we must find a sound that the dog can recognize that they got it right, because we're trying to communicate to them what we want them to do, but it is a little bit of trial and error on their part. So we can use something like a clicker. So I'm sure plenty of you have come across, you know, a clicker before. Oh, Luna just perked up. She's like, oh, what's that? What clicker? So the clicker is that sound for you. Interestingly, I've found some nervous dogs or very sound sensitive dogs don't like the sound of a clicker initially, and they can find it a little bit aversive because it's kind of loud. You can build, you know, pair that with food afterwards, very quickly after the click, and the dog will start to change its mind about it. But you've got to bear in mind, you've got to have that on. This one's got a bit that can go around your wrist, and then you can have it in your hand ready to go. So you've got to be either naturally at handling things, but I find that for some people, handling a muzzle, handling the clicker, and getting food can all be a bit much. However, you can get clicker rings that you put onto your finger. So you just literally click onto them by doing that, and that they work quite well, so they're out the way a little bit. Alternative to a clicker, you can use a verbal marker, and that's generally what I do. Is I use verbal markers, and I use the word yes because I want to use a word that I don't use as general praise. If I use good girl, good dog, something like that, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I talk to my dogs quite a lot. I'm always chatting to them. I'm always praising them in general, and I use that as general praise and just love and affection really with that. The difference with the word yes is I only really use it when it's a specific behavior that the dog has done. So if the dog sat, I would go yes, and then I would go into my pouch and then feed the dog. That way is very definitive for the dog. because when we train any dog, we've always got to make sure that there is clarity for the dog. Do they know exactly what they got right? Dogs are very quick to move on from one behavior to another. And if we don't get that definition of that's the behavior we want, it can lead to confusion in the dog's mind about what was I getting right? I thought it was that. Oh, now it's this. And then they can get confused. And if they get confused, they can demonstrate that in some frustration behavior or even anxiety. So it's important we define that. That bridging sound or that marker sound gives you time between the behavior that you want, saying you got it right, and then putting your hand into your pouch and getting your food out. If we just had food, if we just, they did something and we just handed the food over, the problem is often with a lot of people I watch that by the time they've handed the food over, the dog may have done several different things. And then the dog is accidentally reinforced for slightly different behavior. The most common one I see that is actually on a dog which we've asked to sit, and as somebody pulls out the food and presents it towards the dog's got up. And the dog's got up and they hand the food over. And I always say to them, well, what behavior did you just reward by handing that food over? And they're like, well, the sit. And I said, well, no, it's not, because your dog got up after the sit. So now the dog thinks that getting up is what's being rewarded. So you're struggling with the dog staying in a sit, but that's because you've rewarded the dog getting up. So it's important we have this real definition that yes can hold the dog in that behavior once we get them conditioned to it. So a simple exercise with that is just to literally sit the dog in front of you. The second their bottom is on the floor, say yes, and then put your hand in the pouch and then pass the food over. Try not to put your hand in the pouch as you're saying yes. We want the yes, hand in the pouch, then feed the dog. It can be hard to coordinate yourself sometimes, and you'll catch yourself out doing that. We call you a bit of a gunslinger if your hand's sort of sitting in your pouch. My advice is put your pouch or your treat pouch somewhere where it's not sitting in front of you, where you rest your hand. If it's slightly behind you, you have to think about putting your hand in the pouch. So get the dog to sit, mark it, say yes, and then feed the dog. And then you might move backwards a couple of steps, encourage the dog to come with you, ask them for another sit, mark it, say yes, and then feed them again. And I generally do a set of 6 of those. And then after the set of 6, I'll take a bit of food and throw a bit of food out one way and say, find it. And then I'll take another bit of food, throw it out the other way, and then say, find it. That's an intermission for the dog. It's a little breather, a little break from those set of 6. And then I'll gather the dog back into me with a bit of attention, and then I'll do another set of 6. Okay. And I might do maybe 1 or 2 sets of those for a week, two a day, 2 of those sets a day. And then that yes is really loaded. Now, you may want to rush to your muzzle training. I get that, because you're like, I need to get my dog muzzle trained and I want to learn how to do it. But the foundation stuff that I'm going to give you is actually the most important. It's what leads on to the dog trusting you, feeling confident about what you might be doing. But it's also an opportunity for you to learn first about your timing before you even bring the muzzle out. If your timing isn't good when you've got the muzzle present, then you may undo what you're trying to achieve. So my advice is load up that marker first. Okay, get that going. What you should start to find is the dog tune into the word yes and get excited. Or if you're going to use a clicker, the dog get excited by that sound, because in their brain, you've made a guarantee every time you say that you're going to pass them food. Now, there will be some occasions where you say yes and then the dog does behavior. Don't panic if that happens. Just don't hand over the food in that moment. Wait until the dog demonstrates the behavior you want again, or try and capture it when it does it again, and then say yes, and then hand the food over. What we don't want to do is hand the food over for the wrong behavior. Okay, it still has to be the behavior that we design. Okay, so loading the marker is really important. Now, Luna, who I'm going to be using, is very proficient with that. She's, all our training, even when I play with toys, if I get them to sit before I throw the toy, it's yes, and then I throw the toy. So it's been loaded a lot. So she, she understands what yes means, and that it's exciting, and that she's got something right. From that, then we go to what we call a bit of targeting. Now, in essence, I want you guys to think about muzzle training as a targeting exercise. And what do we mean by targeting? Well, targeting is anything. Yeah, it's getting a dog to investigate, touch something, approach something, and when they do so, we mark it and we reward them. So one of the simplest ones to do is with your hands. Particularly if you've got a dog that's cautious, wary about handling, perhaps you've grabbed them a few times and a bit worried about what your hands might do, or what's in your hands. I kind of like dogs to learn about that coming in to touch your hand is, you know, it's a good thing. It's not a scary thing. It's actually quite good. So I'll just get Luna. Luna, come. She's actually gone to sleep on her bed. Come on. Come, good girl. Sweet, sweet. Come on. Good girl. Come here. Let's go. Good girl. Okay, so she's come in. Did you see her? She came in. I said yes, and then I'm going to treat her a little bit. Okay. Yes. I'm going to treat her again for saying, and that's it. Nice. And then all I'm going to do is present my hand. Touch. Yes. Good girl. So what I'm looking for is any movement towards that hand. Touch. Yes. And I use a touch cue. Okay. Normally when I get this going, I will start with my hand right by the dog's head. Okay, because they have no clue about what to do. So it's right there. And most dogs naturally want to investigate a hand because they think something's going to come from it. Touch. Yes. Okay, and what we're looking for is the dog actively moving towards that hand. Okay, touch. Yes. So now it's gone the other way. Okay, and then I'm going to do it the other way. Touch. Yes. So she's already preempting that she needs to touch my hand. Touch. Yes. This exercise is just getting the dog to get in a pattern where going towards your hand, bear in mind at the moment it's just your hand, but later on there'll be something in your hand, is a positive experience. We don't want them thinking that you're going to grab them or anything like that. So if you've had any of that behavior before where you've had to grab your dog, they can be cautious about approaching hands. So hand targeting is a really good way of getting a dog to move around willingly. There's no force. I've got no collar on Luna. I can't, you know, manhandle her in any way. She's got a choice to opt in or opt out. She'll tell me when's enough and she'll move off. And she's allowed to do that. Okay, I'm always going to be watching what she's saying. So I'll put it out again. Touch. I'll let her think. Yeah, what? You can do it. Touch. She wants my food. Yes, she's got to touch the hand. Okay. For that moment, that little pause, she's kind of thinking, going, well, how else can I get the food? If I sit here looking real cute, perhaps you'll just give it to me for sitting there looking cute. But the goal here is as I want her to touch the hand. I want to move around to touch the hand. Touch. Yes. Okay, so hand targeting is a really good exercise to do. This is a precursor sometimes to muzzle training. It just gets the dog used to the idea of being in front of you and moving towards those hands in different directions. So you might start close towards the dog, and then you might start moving further away. If your dog has a really negative association to your hands, you can start to use a different target if you want to. So you can get things like these, which are little target sticks. Touch. Yes. And you'll see that she'll go to the target stick. And then I can actually make it go further away. Touch. Yes. Good. Okay. So she's still learning that pattern. And I don't really have to tell her to touch on the target stick. She loves the target stick. Okay. Touch. Okay, so she's moving towards that target stick. Every time she touches it, I will remove it and then I'll represent it again. Touch. Okay, good girl. So same with your hand. Don't leave your hand lingering. If you're going to do hand targeting, it's really important the dog is coming to your hand. I see a lot of people get it wrong where they're kind of like shoving the hand towards the dog, going, please touch it almost. Now, remember, to a dog that can be offensive. Is shoving your hand in, you know, their face. They're a bit like, you know, what are you doing? So it's really important that we build it. The dog is actually going to the hand. Once they've gone to the hand, just take that hand away and then represent it again. Yeah, touch, touch. Yes. So the first one I didn't mark and reward because she didn't actually touch it. She sort of went vaguely towards it. The second one I did because she actually touched it. So hand targeting is my first exercise generally before muzzle training. That just gets the dog comfortable moving around to your hands no matter where they are and touching something. You know, there's a system of you touch this, you'll get marked and you'll get rewarded. Now, you'll also notice that I'm sitting down. It's really important when you do this training to be seated. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is a lot of dogs have already experienced being manhandled, perhaps having the lead put on when you're trying to find the loop for the collar, perhaps you're putting a harness on the dog. And I watch a lot of dogs that just don't like having a harness on because they've been manhandled. Just an extra on that. If you want to learn about harness training positively, we've got all the videos free on YouTube you can access on harness training as well. So it's really important we do it in a way where the dog can come to us and can move away. If I was standing, a few things would happen. One is I'm naturally going to be more intimidating. Secondly, there's a temptation from you, this is human behavior, to march towards the dog to put the muzzle on. And the second you start heading towards the dog with a muzzle on, they're going to start to retract. And then I watch owners and they're persisting further forward towards the dog when actually the dog is going, whoa, 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 what are you doing? I need out. I'm not sure about this. If you're seated, it ensures that the dog is making the choice. You can't get it too wrong. You're less intimidating. You're not moving towards the dog. And it does mean the dog will come into you. So we've got hand targeting. You could use, my little stick for target stick. But essentially what we're teaching here is the dog to put its nose in something. And there's a few cute tricks on Instagram. You'll see, people making sort of heart shapes with the, their fingers and the dog sticking its nose through the fingers and doing it that way. Some cute little stuff, just getting the dog to put his nose through stuff. But a simple one is you can use something like a cone. Okay, it's a very simple cone. Again, yes, it's not a muzzle, but it's all about building that pattern and that positive association about the dog, no matter what you hold in your hand, that they can put their nose in something, okay? And this is a blank canvas. So if your dog is worried about a muzzle already, then you can start the process with something like this, so that you're building that reinforcement history with your dog, that putting a nose into something that you hold can actually be very positive and rewarding. So where do we start with something like this? Well, this is where we build on essentially step by step the dog orientating towards whatever it is we're holding in our hand, whether that's a muzzle or a cone or a target stick. We're looking for the dog just generally referencing that to begin with. I'm not expecting, I'm not expecting the dog to stick its nose right in that cone straight away. That's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. But if the dog is inquisitive about the cone and wants to investigate the cone and sniffs it and wants to be what is it, I will mark that general orientation towards the cone. Once we get that general orientation, I will shift my approximations as to now I would like you, rather than just sniffing on the outside of the cone, I'd like you to sniff towards the inside of the cone, perhaps investigate just there at the entrance, and I'll mark it and then reward the dog. I'm not going to reward through the cone to start with. I'm going to reward to the side, so the dog puts its head in and out. I like the dog at this stage to know that if they put their nose in or their muzzle in, they're going to get rewarded for pulling it out too. We build the duration on keeping their head in the muzzle slightly further down the session. But initially, all I'm wanting is the dog putting its nose in, or vaguely in, and then they get rewarded out, in, out, in, out. If the dog knows it can retract its head and come out, it makes them feel more comfortable with the process, because they feel like they've got a choice. I can put my head in and then I get rewarded coming out as well. So that gives them confidence. So with Luna with the cone, I'm just trying to work out where it's probably the best place, probably this way with the cone. Yes. So she just touched the side of it. Okay, so I'm going to mark it. Yes. Now, bear in mind, we've done touch targeting with Luna before. So when I introduce something, yes. When I introduce something new, her natural instinct is, well, do you want me to touch it? So it builds confidence. I'm going to turn it ever so slightly. Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. Outside. Okay. Touch. Yes. So at the moment, she's still touching on the outside of the cone. So what I might do is then present it in a way where she's more likely to succeed on centering it into the middle. Yes. Okay, so I don't know if you saw that, guys. She put her nose just on the inside of the cone. Okay, and even though I said yes, and it took a little while for my treat pouch to go around the other side so that I can access it with my left hand for the water. Yes, I know she knows what she had to do was right, because she's now offering, putting her nose more into that cone. So I'm going to just turn side on. Yeah, come around. Yes. Okay, so now she's starting to put her nose in. You can't quite see it so much. I might go the other side again. Hold on, because she's actually blocking the cone a little bit. Okay, she's getting excited now. Okay, touch. Yes. So it's just on the outside again on that one. Okay, I'm going to shorten up the cone a bit. So now I'm going to ask, instead of the outside, I want the inside. Yes. Okay, she just put her nose in a little bit. Touch. Now, if that happens, if the dog paws at it, I'm just going to go neutral. I'm not going to go, no, because remember, the dog's still learning. She doesn't know what it is specifically I really want her to do. So she'll offer some other behaviors and go, what do you want me just to paw it with my foot? You know, if you say touch, you want me to paw it. I'm just going to blanket. Okay, she gets no feedback, no yes, no food. So for her, she's by trial and error, she's going, what do you want me to do? If that happens, we just ignore it. Okay, and then we make sure that we mark the next one that is close to what we want. Okay, touch. Yes, good girl. Now the temptation there was there's a little bit of a pause. You could see it in her thinking. She was genuinely thinking about, what do I need to do? Humans, yes, good girl. Humans want to tell dogs what to do all the time. And they think by verbally saying touch, 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 touch a million times, yes, that the dog will figure it out. Actually, sometimes just being silent for a few seconds, letting the dog think and process what we're asking her to do and letting her figure it out is the best method, because then she's really processing it. She's really starting to work out the pattern. Good girl. Touch. Okay, so still aiming for the inside of the cone, not the outside. So there she hit the outside of the cone. I don't want the outside of the cone now. I want inside the cone. Okay, touch. So she's getting a little frustrated because she's like, well, I've touched it, but you're not giving me anything. And that's because I've changed the goalpost a little bit. Now I'm going, I want you to touch inside. Touch. Yes, good girl. That time she put her nose quite well in. So I've been very generous. I said yes, but she's probably got 4 or 5 bits of, reward food there for that one. Okay. I'm going to give her a little break. I'm going to just take it away. I'm going to throw away. Good girl, go find it. Please find it. Okay, so I'm going to do a few throw outs the other way. Good girl, have another break. Find it. Okay, good girl, find it. That just alleviates a little bit of frustration, but I tend to try and do that. Maybe we do a set of 6, then have, a couple of throwaways, and then we would come back and do another set of 6. So I'll do it again. Touch. So this time, again, I'm not wanting her on the outside of the cone. I want her on the inside of the cone. Yes, good girl. So initially, remember, I would start with the dog just touching anywhere on that cone. Now I'm starting to go to, I'm trying to define it a bit more. Now, it's cool that you're coming towards the cone, but I want you inside, putting your nose slightly inside the cone. Touch. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Good. Yeah. So now that's really nice. You start to formulate the idea that, okay, so it's no longer out here. It's definitely the vending machine opens when, yes, when she puts her nose inside. So this is a good starting method, particularly if your dog already has a negative connotation about muzzles. It's a fun game for the dogs. It means there's no poor association with this. And it's just a good way. I get these from Kmart. You want ones with sort of slits because eventually you want to be able to feed through. But you can start your muzzle training with these because it's a good starting block and it's building that history with the dog putting their nose into something. But obviously, depending on the shape of your dog's muzzle, a bigger cone if you've got a bigger muzzle dog, so it's not contacting quite so much. But essentially, the dog should get the sensation of putting their nose in and feeling that around their nose. So I'm going to go to using the muzzle now, because I think it's important for you guys to see how we transfer that. Couple of things I'm going to just say is, when we come to using a muzzle, how do we mark and reward when we get to the stage where the dog's having it on for longer and they're keeping their nose in for longer, and how do we feed through? I'm using possum as my reward today because I can chop that into varying chunks. The Baskerville muzzle has a good gap just down the bottom here that you can insert your treats through. However, I've worked with lots of aggressive dogs where actually touching them inside the muzzle and trying to put the food in there is not safe necessarily. So depending on the dog, you can also use my go-to. Instead of putting treats in there, because the trouble is sometimes when you feed them through is they drop out or they fall out, and then that frustrates the dog, is you could use a sachet of baby food. Now this is chicken and sweet corn and brown rice. I've got another one which is beef. And the great thing about those is, I'll just come to a question in a minute. The great thing about those is that you can unswivel those. Just check the dog likes the flavour first. She's like, yeah, I like that. Okay, so she's having a good munch on that baby food. I can just squeeze it a little bit and it comes out. The great thing about those is that I can squeeze it through the muzzle into the dog's mouth very directly, and they can lick it off the tube without too much mess. And then, of course, when you're done with your session, the great thing is that you can put the cap back on and then put it back in the fridge, which is brilliant. So they're a really good one. If I've worked with really aggressive dogs, I tend to use the baby food method. We've got a question, Brooke. What's the question? Okay, so hopefully everyone heard that. That was, how long would you do the targeting with the cone for before you move to the muzzle? My general rule is do a bit of hand targeting, load your marker, do a little bit of maybe hand targeting first, get that going as a separate exercise, maybe for, a few days, 4 days, doing a bit of hand targeting, just see how you go. That'll help you with your timing as well. And then maybe the rest of the week you move to doing a cone. So you might do 3 or 4 days. The key here is to manage your expectations. This sort of training is the speed at which you do it and how you progress with that cone is dictated by the dog, not you. So Luna here has a good history of doing things for me. So for her, the ability to learn a new concept with a new item comes quite readily for her because we've got a good reinforcement history, and she trusts me that, every time I say yes, she's doing the right thing. So there's that clarity for her. With a novice dog who's never done this before, you're going to take a bit longer. It's going to take a couple of weeks at least. I would do targeting and perhaps cone, hand targeting 1 week, and then perhaps the cone training the following week. And what we're looking for is, before you move on, is the behavior of the dog. How comfortable is that dog putting its nose into that muzzle, into that cone, I should say, to start with. If they are really comfortable sticking their head in, almost going, come on, I'm shoving it in there, give me the food, that's a great sign that you're ready to move on. If the dog is still hesitant and cautious about approaching that cone, then you need to break it down into smaller little snippets, slice it down a bit further so that the dog is succeeding more readily, more frequently. The worst thing you can do is rush these initial stages. If you rush and I've got to get it done like by this date or by this time, these foundation behaviors are what lay the path for an easier muzzle training later. So spend the time on these. If you have to spend a few weeks just doing this first before you even bring the muzzle out and start training, then do. It's all beneficial sort of stuff for you, your timing before you introduce the muzzle. Okay, so when we come to a muzzle, first off, we need to make sure we've got the right fit. So this is a size 3 Baskerville muzzle for Luna. I have all the sizes here. They're pretty good in the shops. You can get an idea in the boxes as to what shape they're suited for. And if you go online and buy any of the muzzles, there's a New Zealand muzzle site as well that gives you guidelines on shaping and fitting and things like that. So if you have to get one custom made, you would measure the dog and see, you know, they would make one to suit your dog, for your size dog. So the key is to get the right fit and the shape first. But if you can use a Baskerville, Luna, just give you an idea, is a size 3. Majority of dogs that I work with are a size 4. That is the next size up. It's just a little bit bigger, okay? But most dogs I come across are a size 4. If I get into the bigger breeds like Rotties and things like that, then we tend to get into the sort of size 5s. Okay, there's even size 6 for the giant breeds. But for a dog like Luna, who's a heading dog, size 3 is generally about the right size, just to give you an idea. So when we come to the muzzle training, again, this is now, you know, we are changing what we do. So what's really important here is I'm going to have it on I'm going to turn side on for you so that you can see a little bit better with the sheep behind, because unfortunately our jumpers are for all sorts of black. And of course it's a black muzzle, so it will disappear into the viewing. I've got it on my knee, my arm resting on the knee, so it's just sitting there. And the deal here is that I'm not going to be doing any of this. I'm not going to be pushing it towards the dog or going, can you put it on, or anything like that. I don't want that at all. I want her to be receptive about coming to me. So I'm just going to have my arm along, you know, my leg, and then just my hand hanging off the end with that muzzle there, so that when she's ready, she can approach and then she can move away if she wants to. So I'll just re-engage her again. She's gone down, sitting next to Brooke. Okay, Luna, come, sweetie. Good girl. Okay, so we're starting back at the beginning again. Yes. Okay, my expectation is, even though she's put her head into the cone, my expectation is that she's not going to stick her head straight into the muzzle straight away. I'm afraid to say that's not how training works. The minute you change what you do, the concept, yes, you go back to the beginning. If you really want to make it work and be successful, you go back to the beginning again. So new item, new thing. So what would be my expectation is for her to touch it somewhere on the side or anything like that, but just reference it. Touch. So she's sat. I'm just going to bring her around here. Come here, so you can see her. Okay, so it's there. I want her to touch. Touch. Yes. Okay, she did a little bop onto the muzzle. Okay. Good. Touch. Yes. Okay, so at the moment she's just hitting the strap on the side, not the muzzle itself. Touch. Yes. Okay, which is fine. For the first stages, we just want her, you know, to touch somewhere on the muzzle. It doesn't matter where it is, just somewhere. Again, I'm counting in my head how many we're doing. Maybe, you know, that's 3. We'll do another 3. Touch. Yes. Okay, so now she's touched the inside of the strap. Touch. Yes. Now I'm going to mark that one a bit more heavily with a bit more reward, because she actually put her nose slightly inside the muzzle. Okay, so I'm going to make, you know, we can do these jackpot moments where you're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted. Okay, and be really happy with it and really generous with that effort of putting her nose in. That then means to her that there is more value of putting her nose into the muzzle than there is outside, just at the outside of the muzzle. Okay, touch. Yes. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to take the muzzle away. I'm going to do a throwaway. So that was 6. Yeah, go find it. Ready? Go find it. This may not seem important, this little break of giving the dog an intermission, but it's actually in this intermission that they've got a little bit of time just to process away from the muzzle what they're doing. I find that if you persist on lots of repetitions, 2 things will happen. The dog may get bored. They may feel, you know, if you're not quite doing it quite right, they might feel that they're getting a bit coerced, which we don't want at all. But it also gives you an idea whether the dog is willing to carry on working. So when you throw away, they often come back and go, can I do it again? That means you're getting it right, because if the dog wants to re-engage again, then that tells you they're excited about doing this. And that's how you've got to think of it, is this is a game. Forget it about muzzling. Just think of it as a game. I'm just teaching my dog to target something. It doesn't matter. It could be anything. It's just, it so happens that this is a muzzle. Okay. So now she's looking at me going, well, when can we start again? Okay. So I'm going to hang the muzzle out. I'll just bring her around the front a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Touch. Yes. Okay. So I was patient there and waited, and she actually stuck her head right in the muzzle. Okay, so she put her head in the muzzle again. What she tried first there was touching my hand first, then she went to the side of the muzzle. I just remained neutral, didn't give her anything, I didn't smile at her or anything. And then when she put her head into the muzzle, I was like, yes, that's what I want. And then I rewarded her with the food. Touch. Yes. Okay, now this is important. I don't know if you can see, but her, I'm just going to turn this way a little bit. When I'm doing this, her tail is wagging. Okay, she's not feeling suppressed about this. She's enjoying it. I'll bring her over here so you can see her tail a little bit more. She's actually quite excited about the prospect. Touch. Yes, good girl. Okay, so look, that tail's going. That tells me she's feeling good about this process. She's not feeling like, oh my God, I'm shrinking into a hole. What are you going to put on me? She's excited about this as a sort of game. Yes. Okay, so she's going in, touching the muzzle. Yeah. Touch. Yes. Yeah, well done. So I've moved it just for your benefit so that you can see her body language. I'm going to bring it back to here. I prefer to have it just sort of, on my hand and my, off my leg. So there's a consistent position for it for the dog. But to be fair, actually, you could move it around and make it into a game of go chase the muzzle. Stick your, no matter where it is, stick your head in the muzzle. Just like we do with hand targeting. There's no harm in doing that either. Okay, so we'll ask again. Touch. Yes. So this requires patience. Okay. The temptation is I just want to get a muzzle on the dog, but actually, if you just get the job done, it will always be a negative for the dog because the dog will feel like it never has a choice. It's done very systematically. And I would break it into lots of little sessions where, yes, I'm in my head going, right, well, what are we going to achieve in this session? What am I expecting the dog to do? I'd like the dog to put its nose further into that muzzle for longer. And then I'm going to mark it. Yes. Okay, so now she's really starting to sit her nose right in it. Okay, touch. Yes. Okay, did anybody see that? She just held it there a few seconds longer. Okay, so rather than just darting in and out, on that occasion, she just held it for a few seconds. And what I did was, it's a microsecond longer, but I didn't produce the yes until after that little bit of second longer, because now I'm saying it's great you're putting your nose in there, but now I want you to have your nose in there just for a little bit longer. Okay, touch. Yes, good girl. Again, it can feel like a lifetime when you're waiting like that. You're like, go on, just put your nose in the muzzle. She's processing when she's doing that. She's figuring out. Remember, this is a bit of trial and error for her. She tried the side of my hand. She came around the front. She sat for a little while. She thought about it, and she was like, oh, yeah, hang on a second. That's right. I need to put my head into that muzzle. We have a question. I'll just do a throwaway whilst we're doing this. Yeah, go find it. Find it. So duration is one of these things where it doesn't always become readily offered. It is just literally just a few seconds longer in your delay of your yes. Literally, I mean, it could be a nanosecond. In this bit, I'm doing it so that she's still just putting her nose briefly in. She's not putting her nose right in. I will come to that in a minute as to how to get the dog further in and where we present the food. At the moment, the food is presented out of the muzzle, but we are going to build to the food being presented in the muzzle. We'll still mark it, but the food now comes through the muzzle. But we'll come to that in a sec. What I want to see is just her putting her nose in just for a few seconds, okay? And see if I can build on that. There was another question. We'll come to the straps in a minute. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're all good. Okay. The straps is actually probably the most complicated bit and the bit where you're most likely to offend a dog. So we have to get that right. My advice is you get everything else right. If you get the dog building duration on the muzzle initially, and they're comfortable just sitting there holding their nose in there without the straps going on, then actually putting the straps on becomes a hell of a lot easier. If they're not willing to keep their nose in the muzzle for a longer period of time and they want to pull it out and you're trying to put the straps on whilst they're doing that, you will undo all your training and it will become coercive. And then they start going, well, when you go put it on, then you're going to put those horrible straps on and I don't like it, and you'll lose, you know, lose their willingness and they'll be afraid of it. So it is very step by step, but generally most of the dogs that I've worked with, you know, that are aggressive, I've taught it, you know, we do the targeting, you know, week 1, and then week 2, I start introducing the muzzle. Now, don't forget, I'm very proficient at this. I've done lots of dogs, so my timing is really good. So I can probably do it quicker than a lot of people. My advice to you guys is take the time to build a reinforcement history. Yeah, get that going where the dog sees you as relevant, and that yes has to be something that excites the dog. They should hear yes and either whip round and look at you and go, oh my God, why, you know, I'm going to get something good. What's going to happen? If you get in that, you know that you can really start doing a bit more, but you've got to get that reinforcement history in there. Luna has it a lot. So, okay, for your sake then, guys, so normally I would wait for the dog to put their muzzle in a little bit longer onto this, but I'm going to start feeding from underneath. Okay, so when she puts her muzzle in, so this time I am going to have a treat ready to go just to begin with, okay? But I'm not going to lure her in. I'm just, when she's going to go and put her nose in, I'm going to mark it and then present it through underneath, okay? So I've got the muzzle in my left hand, the treat ready to go in the right hand. So touch, yes. Okay, and she gets the treat in there. And she can still pull her nose out. Okay, so I've got another one again. Touch. Yes. Okay, so initially you can see she's like, well, normally you feed me out of the muzzle. Remember, we do the feeding out of the muzzle first because it builds confidence in the dog that they've got the option to remove their nose from this thing. I don't want them to feel like they're lured and forced to stay in there just for the treat. I want them to go, I'm happy to put my nose in there initially because I know you're going to feed me out of it. And then gradually we're building that treat, you know, whilst it's, you know, she's got it on her nose. Okay, touch. Yes. Okay, just good. Touch. Yes. So she's watching where the food's coming from. If you notice, I'm being careful with my hand. I'm not using it to lure. I'm still looking for the same behavior, which is she puts her nose in. I'm not luring her with a treat. She knows I've got a treat in my hand, which is a bit frustrating for her. But at this stage, I need to have it there ready to go. So I can be quick. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can. Touch. Yes. So this time I'm going to have a multitude of treats in my hand so that I can load it up quite quickly. That means I can do multiple marks and rewards in a row. Touch. Yes. Now that time she tried to sneak the treat out, I'm just going to only feed her now if she keeps her nose in that muzzle. Yes. 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 Okay, so now we're building that little bit of duration. Hold on. Yes. Yes. So she pulls her nose out now. She doesn't get the reward. She's got to hold it in. So I'm only marking when she holds that nose in. Yes. Yeah. Well done. And then I'm going to give her a break. She's going to have a throwaway. Good girl. Go find it. Yeah, you ready? Find it. Good girl. Find it. Okay, we've got a question.
How would you muzzle train a dog that is good, aggressive, a little impatient, and will attention whenever tricks are withheld for other dogs?
Yeah, I've had this. We had a dog here called Walter, who was a Cocker Spaniel, who had a horrific bite history. and had medical issues with his ears, needed ear treatment, but would bite, had resource guarding, would bite. There was lots going on with him. Again, I started with the target training side of things, and with him, that you may find some old videos of me with him on our Facebook page under the video section. You'll see that I use these an awful lot. It just meant I could build a little bit of distance between my fingers and the dog, so there wasn't snatchy. And it also meant that I could control the release of it and how much there was. And what I found with him was the slow release of this and the licking action calmed him. So licking off the end of it prevented the snatchiness and calmed. So we got a more moderated response and behavior. And it's nice because you can pull it away, present it, pull it away, present it. So it works really, really, really well with some of those dogs where you can't put your fingers right to their mouth because they might get nasty or anything like that. So my advice is go and buy some of these, you know, baby foods. I mean, these are all organic. So, I mean, God, dogs love them. But I would use this, you know, to start with a dog like that. But like I say, if you want to see how I did it with Walter, there are videos there of what we did, and you'll see that I use these through the muzzling, and how we, in the end, we could do all his medication with no issues. We could do all the grooming. I could clip him with the clippers, you know, and he did really, really well. But that's more cooperative handling and grooming, which we do hope to do another webinar on at another date, because it's very important. And so that we can systematically show you how to work around handling a dog in different areas. But today we're just focusing on obviously the muzzle training, which in essence you need first if you're going to work with dogs like that. But baby food is the key for you on that one. Okay, so she's doing really, really well. We're getting to the stage where she's, you know, she's putting her nose in quite willingly. She's starting to, you know, really build a pattern that sticking her head into this is really good. And then we're starting to build some of that duration. So again, I'm going to load up my hand ready with a few treats. Would you like, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll do it with, let's do it with a beefy one. I'll do it with one of the baby foods so you can see how we can use this as a method through the muzzle. They are really quite handy for muzzle training. I'll just bring her over. Luna, come. She can have a little taste. Oh, I just dropped it all on the floor. There you go. She can have a bit of a lick. They are better if they've been in the fridge, by the way, guys, because they're not quite so runny. Okay. She loves that. Okay, so I'll bring her around. Good girl. Come here. Good girl. Touch. Yes. Actually, if you look for her, now I've changed the context. What does she do? She starts to back away from the muzzle because she's like, well, that's not normally there. That's not what's normally in the muzzle. This is actually really important for you to understand, which is, well, we go, yeah, but it's just baby food and a thing. But for her, she's like, well, hang on, that's not how we did it. You changed something ever so slightly, and now I've lost a little bit of confidence. So what's important for her is that I go back to using the tricks I was using before, because that's where I built the value and the system that was familiar. Remember, for dogs, it's all about predictability. If you suddenly become unpredictable, you suddenly change something ever so slightly in the pattern, how you're sitting, how you're holding the muzzle, one movement towards them to try and prompt it onto them. Anything like that will change the system and the dog will lose confidence. So actually for her, that's actually quite a good example of why I wouldn't use it. If I'd used the baby food from the beginning, we probably would have been absolutely fine. But that slight change of context, she's like, not sure, you're changing. What are you going to do? For a lot of dogs, they're suspicious. They're naturally suspicious. What's your intentions? What are you going to do? Are you coercing me? What's going to happen? And the problem is because humans do coerce dogs a lot, of course, dogs sometimes. They're not stupid. They're aware of that. Okay, so our job is to make sure that we're laying that and we're saying there's no force here. You've got choices. Remember, this is all about choice. Okay, so I'm going to have my hand loaded up with multiple treats again. Okay, ready to go. Touch. Yes. Yes. Okay, so I dropped one there. Got to make sure the next one. Good girl. She's come out. She gets no treats apart from that one that's fell on the floor. Okay. Yes. Yes. good girl. Okay, and then go throw away. So that was a good amount of time in that muzzle. Yes. Okay, she had the choice. She could pull out. She was there waiting, going, there's more to come. And of course, that's a really quick, fast rate of reinforcement, yeah? Which is, she put her nose in, it was for longer, and I probably marked and rewarded there, I'd say every 2 to 3 seconds. If I waited any longer, I suspect she would have pulled her nose out of the muzzle at this stage. So that rapid rate of reinforcement, because I'm asking more of her now. This is getting more pressure for her. And I think that's something people need to realize is there is more pressure on the dog to put their nose into these muzzles. So this is not the time to turn off on your marking and your rewarding, because we're actually asking more of the dog. If anything, ramp up the speed at which you reinforce the dog in these early stages of putting their nose in, and then gradually we're going to increase that length of time between those marks and rewards. So instead of 2 to 3 seconds, it might be 5 seconds. And then, you know, once we get that, her comfortable with the 5 seconds, then it might go to 8 seconds and then maybe 10 seconds, okay? But you mustn't jump straight to it. If you make it progressively harder as well, you start building up the length of time harder and harder and harder each time. My experience is dogs, yes, good girl. My experience is dogs learn that, yes, okay, and they will go, you're making this harder with less reward. So then they start to turn off the training. They start to be like, I'm not interested. So we normally do what we call intermittent training. So here I'm doing every 2 to 3 seconds a rate of reinforcement. She's keen, she wants more. You can see that. And she's going to move the muzzle away, so she's not just doing it when I don't want her to. I might do every 2 to 3 seconds, and then I might do a 5 second, but then I might go back to a 2 to 3 second mark and reward, and then I might do an 8 second, and then back to a 2 to 3, and then to a 5. So if you do it intermittently, it means the dog starts to not count or not go. There's a pattern forming of you're delaying it for longer, asking me to do more with less reward. If you do intermittent training, it's been shown that the dogs almost are sitting there and go, well, is there more? You know, when's the next one going to come? When am I going to be told? So they hang there for a little bit longer. So it can help really a lot with that duration training. Okay, so we'll go back to it again. Touch. So again, she's touching me outside. That's not going to work. Yes. Okay, I'm going to get the treat in the muzzle this time, ready to go. Touch. Yes. Yes. Okay, I've got a few more ready to go again. So initially you notice I didn't have food in my hand at the beginning. It's only now where we're getting to the duration, because I need to have it there ready to mark and reward every 2 to 3 seconds, okay? So that she keeps her nose in there. But I'm still looking for her to offer the behavior. She's like, how do I get it? So that I can mark and reward every that 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, so Luna, touch. The reason I generally don't like having the food in my hand is because some dogs will get frustrated that it's in your hand and they're like, just give it to me. So the initial part of the training, I try to have it in a pouch or in a pot. Yes. Yes. Okay, so we're 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So that was 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1. Okay, so there we go. So it gives you 5 seconds is probably about the max I could do with her at the moment on duration before she's likely to pull her nose out. So again, use that as a bit of a marker. Count it in your head. Touch. Yes. 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. Good girl. And then I'm going to do a throwaway. Good girl. Okay, so there's that intermittent timing on it. Obviously, I'm counting out for your benefit. You don't have to do that with your dog, but if you find it helps you, yep, do it if you need to, but generally just do it in your head. Yes. And what I'm trying to pre-anticipate is mark and reward before I see the dog start to retract out of that muzzle. You get a sense that they're getting a little bit like, oh, I'm gonna go. Try and get your yes in just before that happens, and then reward them again, and that will keep them in that muzzle for longer. Otherwise, they'll keep dipping it in and out all the time. But just have your hand ready and loaded with, you know, lots of those treats ready for that quick succession of marking. Okay, so we'll do it again. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so still we're on the 5. Yes. Okay, any longer and she starts to get hesitant. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. Okay, good. Just making sure her nose is in. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Good girl. Okay, and then we'll do a throwaway. So that's more intense to the dog. And I know you can't see, but her tail is still really wagging. So I know that she's not finding this stressful. Her body language is comfortable and relaxed. She's almost doing that shoving her nose in. She's pushing in muzzle now. So she's almost going, come on, my nose is in there, you know, cough up the goods. That's what she's kind of saying. But it's still really positive for her, okay? When would I start going into the straps? Well, at the moment, I have got them, you know, curved out to the sides. Sometimes at the beginning, I'll even fold them all the way back so they're completely out of the way when I first start training. But if you're going to have them present, we need to start getting the idea, because really what we want is the dog to have that sitting on their nose without them going, I'm going to get it off, whilst you get the straps organized. So remember, the minute you come to do straps, we've got to take, you know, a hand over the dog's head, and we have to break that down so that we don't just go to, I'm going to suddenly tie it on, you know, and clip it on when it's there. So some muzzles will have a clip on the back, and some will have a buckle. It depends on the manufacturer. Buckles, funny enough, are less likely to fail than a clip at the back. And interestingly, for a dog like Luna, who's very sensitive to sounds and noises, the sound of the clip behind her ear could be quite unsettling for her. So something with a buckle can actually be, you know, kinder and gentler on their ears and their sound whilst you're doing this. So just something to bear in mind. But it does depend on the sensitivity of the dog. Okay, so she's doing really well. We'll do another one. Touch. I want her to put her nose right in now. I will get some rewards out ready to go. Touch. Yes. Now, bear in mind, I'm doing this in one long session for the benefit of you guys. I would, with a novice dog, yes, I would break this down into maybe, you know, several sessions. I wouldn't be doing all this in one go. This is far too long. Normally, the sessions in which I would train with a dog would be, you know, 5-10 minutes. And I might do maybe, you know, a set of 6, throw away a set of 6, and then maybe another set of that again. And then that would be it. That would be my session for the day. I could do one maybe later or even later than that. So I could do 3 of those in a day, but it's important you don't laborize over this. It becomes laborious for the dog. Don't forget as well, she's getting filled up with food. So if you carry on, the value of that food will start to decrease to some degree, because they're like, well, actually, I'm quite full, I'm satisfied. I mean, the best way to do this is, you know, don't feed your dog breakfast and do it through the muzzle training. And then this becomes associated with, oh my God, my feed time is in relation to this muzzle. It's a bit like the greyhounds. You put a muzzle on a greyhound, they get super excited because they know, well, we're going to go potentially race, or we're going to go out. So they get very excited about it, which is, you know, that's great. We know that they've got a positive feeling about it. But for the benefit of you guys, I am doing this as one long session. But my advice is this really needs to be broken down into lots of short snippets. Generally, we always finish on success as well. We don't want it where the dog is starting to veer away or had enough or wandering off and is like, I'm done. That means we've overworked the dog. Luna here is still very keen. She's a bit of a pig. She loves her food. And so she's quite willing to carry on, and she's going, I want more. But not every dog is going to be like that, especially novice dogs that don't have much history of this sort of training. We've got another question. Absolutely. Yeah. So if can you take the muzzle out to, to do a bit of touch targeting whilst you're out walking? Yes, you could. Any context of doing it and building reinforcement of it being a positive thing is a great idea. But remember, we've got to be definite about what are we trying to achieve. Are we, where are we at if we do that? The minute you change the context and you start moving outside, you might undo the progression that you've got, because the minute you change the context, the dog is going to get distracted or might not be consistent in approach. So I do find generally in the early stages, it is better to do this at home with minimal distractions. I mean, we've got a lot of dogs here and we've had to put them all away. Yes. Okay, I'm just going to mark and reward because she's actually just offering to put her nose fully in. Yes. That I'm going to catch her. I'm going to shape it because she's offering it. Yes. And I'm crazy if I don't mark and reward that. Yes. Okay, just concentrate on her for the moment whilst instead of talking to you guys. Yes. Okay, so that was a nice long duration hold in there. Okay, again, at no point am I touching her, I'm not patting her, I'm not doing any of this. Okay, it's just purely mark and reward on that muzzle. Okay, but yeah, you could use it. My only caution with is just make sure this doesn't become a toy. Okay, we don't want dogs biting at it. Remember the goal here is for a dog to put his nose in, not to like grab it or bite it and think of it as some sort of fun game and then I run around with it in my mouth. So you have got to be a little bit careful about the context in which you do this. My advice would be is do it at home first, get it solid first, because when we move outside, we're going to go back a few steps outside when you start your training again, because the context has changed and we've got to try and get them familiar with it on and then moving around. The best place to do that is in your house without other distractions. If you just try and simply go from, right, we've got to the stage where the muzzle can go on, the dog seems to be happy with it on, and then they start moving and you haven't reinforced that, the movement, the sensation of it when they move can then become aversive. So we've got to make sure we're getting them used to wearing it, moving around the house, and the best place to do that is at home. So, but certainly the more reinforcement you can do on this, the better. But I do want you to think about it almost progressively. What each time you do a session, is the goal to get the dog to just put their nose in just a little bit further into the muzzle? Is the goal to get the dog to put its muzzle right in, its nose right into the muzzle? Is it, to stay there for a few seconds longer? Think of that in your planning for your sessions so that you're achieving that. If you're a bit all over the place as to what you want the dog to do and not too defined, then you will get that in the behavior and then you won't get the progression that you want. Okay, so touch. Okay, I'll just have the food ready to go through the muzzle. Touch. Yes. Okay, so we're going to start working on the strap. Yes. Yes. Okay, she's taking her head out. Just going to wait. Do it again. Touch. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to do a movement round. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we've just got a little bit of movement on that strap. Good girl. Yes. Well done. Okay. Got a little bit left over food there. I'm going to take the muzzle away. Okay. Touch. Yes. So she's just moved the strap into the muzzle, so I'm going to move that out of the way. Yes. Now the food comes in. Yes. 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 No. So even that one I said yes, she pulled her head out just as I said yes. So I'm not going to reward her on that one because otherwise I've then marked and rewarded her removing her head out of the muzzle. This time I want her to stay in. Touch. Yes. 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 Good girl. We'll move it away, give it a throw away. Okay, we'll get ready for the strap again. So this time I want her to kind of put her nose in, yes, with it on my knee if I can. I'll just get the food ready. Touch. Yes. And if I want to cup that muzzle, I can cup it between my knees. Okay, touch. Yes. Okay, strap goes round. Yes. And then I release the food. Okay, good. Well done. Okay, we'll do it again. Yes. So now she's really presenting. Strap goes round. I'm not going to mark that because she pulled her head out. Touch. Yes. 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 Strap goes round. Yes. Good girl. Okay, I'm going to give her a breather. Just give her a break. And there's a question. Can I find it?
The dog's very nervous about stress. Start even smaller steps. So like move it over like a bit, not all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah. So if your dog is super worried about these straps, it can be, you know, they see them out the corner of the eye. You saw Luna there, sort of like, you know, what's going on, what's happening. If they see that movement, then just break it down even smaller into just, you know, I just touched the strap. Don't go straight over the head. Just touch the strap and mark on a board if you need to. Break it down even finer if you need to. Don't forget, it's also that action of putting something over the dog's back of the dog's head can be quite unnerving for the dog. So it's important that you make sure that that action of your hand going over, for some dogs, they're like, you know, what are you going to do the second you do that? And we'll pull their head back. So you might break that down into a slight movement, you know, each time, and then do it intermittently. So sometimes you might be there, sometimes you might be there, sometimes you'll be back here again, just to make sure the dog is comfortable with your hand movement. Yes, good girl. Bless her. She'll come back to do it again. Okay, so she gets it in here. I'm going to make sure she's got to get her nose in. Yes. 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 Good girl. Okay. Strap moves, strap comes off. Yes, good girl. I'm still going to feed her in the muzzle now, not out of the muzzle. Yes. Go on, put your hand, put your nose in, then you can do it. Good girl. Yes. Okay, so strap. Yes. Good girl. Strap. Yes. So I am coordinating. I'm kind of holding the muzzle. I've got the food cupped in my hand under the muzzle. And when I say yes, all I do is I flatten my hand on the underside of the muzzle, which pushes the food through the muzzle for the dog. So I'm almost kind of cupping the underneath. And so the food comes through the gap. So rather than me placing it through like I was before, now I'm pushing it up into the muzzle and she's licking it out from my hand. Okay, she's licking it up. Okay, that allows me to have the muzzle secure. But then I can work on my other hand with the strap without this hand having to be holding the muzzle. Got another question? If you use the baby food, then actually it's quite easy because you can just have it wedged between your hand. So if I take off the top, because you only got to squeeze it a little bit, you could have it set up like that, in, ready to go. And then when you need it, you can just give it a squeeze if you need to with your hand that's there, if you need to do it. But ultimately, what we're looking for is a dog leaving their muzzle, their nose in, and then we mark, and then we reward. You should, in the end, not be able to, you don't always need the food in your hand if you build up the duration slowly. And then they'll find that they'll just hold it there no matter where you put your hand to get the treats. They'll just hang there waiting for you to get the treat. Okay, touch. Yes. Okay, so see how this time she waited with her nose in that muzzle before I got the treat? Yes. Okay, so now my hand is dipping into that pouch while she's still holding there. Yes. So now she knows that the food will come through the muzzle. Yes. Okay, she took her head out, so I'm not going to feed her. Yes. Okay, I am going to reward her for that one, but just the strap got in the way, so I'm going to move that out again. Yes. Go get your nose in. Yes. Good. Yeah, nice job. Yes. Yes. Good job. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to just go and do another strap one. So I'm ready to go. I'm going to get it wedged on my knees. Yes. Strap. Release the treat. Got it. Strap. Release the treat. Yes. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Do it again. Strap. Okay, if she pulls her head out when I do the strap, the most important thing is I don't say no, I don't say any of that. I just recognize that she's going, that's a little bit too much pressure, and I allow her to retreat and I take all hands off, but all food stops. If your dog backs away, don't try and bring them back with the food. Don't try and lure them back with the food. Just let them back off. They need to know that they can back off. Where most people go wrong is they're like, oh, I'm just so close to getting that strap on, and then they kind of persist. And just as the dog moves back, they try and, oh, I'll just get the clip on. Don't, please don't. It's really important that moment where the dog, if the dog's just going, oh, I need a look, hang on, I need a moment, let them retract. When they're ready, they'll come back again. Okay, if you do any amount of force at any stage on this, when the dog is actually trying to pull backwards and go, hang on a second, it'll be your undoing. Yeah, so it's important that you just build it really slowly. Good girl. Touch. Yes. Yes. Okay, so strap goes on. I'm just picking up the other one, the other side. Yes. Good girl. Now remember, if you've got an aggressive dog, Luna's not aggressive. Good girl. I'm just going to do a throwaway, give her a break and have a little breather because she does need it. If you've got an aggressive dog, you won't be getting to this stage straight away anyway. You know, if you're trying to put a strap on an aggressive dog within a few days, then you're doing something wrong because you're going to incite the dog going, well, what are you doing? And they're more likely to react. You really need to make sure that the dog is willingly going, I want to do this game again. Okay, so even if it takes you 2-3 weeks to get this, you know, before you put the strap on, where the dog's just like, every time you produce it, they get excited and they're like, oh my God, it's that thing and I want to put my nose in there, then that's great. Only build to the strap at the last bit and build it up slowly, that bit of strap. Everyone gets obsessed with, I've just got to get it on. But actually, if you take the time on the precursor bit, then actually that last bit is not so hard. I'm rushing through it here with Luna, which is not ideal for you guys, for your benefit. But you want to make sure that you are doing it very slowly, systematically, and progressively with the dogs, with always taking into account how they're feeling on the day. Remember, dogs aren't robots. If you've got a dog with anxiety or worry issues, that will fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. So some days you might progress more with this, and then other days it feels like you've gone back a few steps. So what's really important is to make sure you're reading your dog on those days, and you may just change your session plan a little bit on those days where the dog's not feeling quite, you know, itself or confident, for whatever reason's going on, you know, to worry them on that day. And then other days you might go, oh my God, we've progressed really far. It just depends on the dog in that moment. But the most important thing with this training is to read your dog. How's it feeling? Does it want to carry on? Are they giving you carry on signals? Are you giving them enough rest breaks between them? If they want to carry on, you've seen Luna plenty of times through this session just come back and go, I'd like to start again. She'll bring herself back in, and then she'll be like, she'll stick her head into the muzzle. That's her saying, I'd like to continue. And that's a really good way for you to judge whether your dog is comfortable or not. Okay. If they keep slinking away, well, then they're not comfortable. You've either rushed it, you're not broken it down enough, you need to slice it down. I'm afraid to say there's no set how long you would, do those approximations for each session, because every dog is different. You have to read the dog on the day to get the best results. So some days you'll be like, yeah, it's doing great, and then other days they'll regress a little bit. That's quite common. But always think about your setup. Don't change what you do. Try and keep it as predictable as possible, especially with aggressive and anxious dogs. The more predictable you are in what you do, how you sit, how you present it, the more confident and comfortable they become with this, because they're like, okay, I know what to expect. And I think that is the key with dogs. If they know what to expect, they will offer more. If they don't know what to expect and you change, what you do or how you approach it, then that's when you become unpredictable, and then the trust disappears. So be as predictable as you can in your setup, that's for sure. Okay. We'll make this one, where are we at the time? Yeah, so we'll make this the last one only because Luna, she's done quite a lot here. And what we might do is do a second webinar so that we can get to the stage of when the muzzle is on. Once you've got to that stage, the muzzle is on, we've got the strap going on, and then how do we mark and reward whilst they're wearing it? Because that really is the next stage. But yeah, another question? Yeah, so if you're going to use it for longer periods of time, remember it's all again about building that up. So we would get the strap on, and then we would take the strap off. So the next stages to this is strap goes on, round, through, then you would take it off again. Okay, I wouldn't put the strap on and then just leave it attached to the dog, the muzzle, and because the first thing they would do is, oh my God, now I haven't got a choice to get it off, is I would do the strap and then I would undo the strap, and probably I would spend a few sessions just on that, just put the strap on, put the strap on, put the strap on, put the strap off. When the dog's comfy with that, then I would be like, now the strap is on. Now we build duration with the strap on, which is exactly the same as what we've been doing here without the strap on. It's just we're repeating that now with that around their head. Once you've done that, then you're actually building that reinforcement with it on more permanently and building up that time frame of it on. So you're essentially building that duration. You then, after that, would start building in some movement. Now, interestingly, you can build movement with the muzzle on by switching from touching this, because they're wearing it, to still touching your hand when they've got the muzzle on. So once they've got comfortable wearing the muzzle, I would probably still do a hand target and say touch. They could come touch you with the muzzle on, yes, and then feed the dog through the muzzle. So this is now creating a pattern from what you've already done before, which is, I know hand targeting, that's exciting and fun. The difference is now we're doing it with a muzzle on. That they know the game, they know it's fun, but it's encouraging a bit of movement with the muzzle on and not fixating that the muzzle is on. They've still got something to orientate towards, which is your hand touching. And that hand touching, then you can start to move the dog around the room to hand touch. So they get used to the movement with the muzzle on, and then you can mark and reward. You can then add that and apply that outside. So you can still do hand targeting outside, which means instead of them fixating, I've got a muzzle on, I've still got a job to do with the muzzle on, which is go touch your hand. If you've done a really good job on your hand targeting, or any target, it could be your target stick, it works really well for training once the muzzle is on already. Okay, we'll do one last bit with Luna. Okay, see how she's feeling, but I think she's quite full. Okay. You can use, if your dog is quite food orientated, you can use their kibble for this, or whatever food you use for their normal diet, so they don't get fat. But if you are going to use high value treats, because perhaps there's negative association with the muzzle already, then my advice would be is use something high value, but don't feed them that day. Don't give them the other stuff, because otherwise you're going to end up with a rather podgy dog if you're going to do quite a few of these sessions, or cut down their amount of kibble on that day. Another question, Brooke? Yes. Yeah. If you want my tip on, that's a really good question. So if you look at this one, there's a loop here, okay, which you feed the collar through for safety so that the whole muzzle cannot come off. In my experience, that is actually quite a pain to put on with the collar, because then you're dealing with a strap and then having to put the collar on, because you actually need to do it with the collar hanging on this. You can't put this on whilst the collar's on the dog. If you try and do that and you're trying to put the clip through there, it's very awkward for the dog. So there's a couple of things you can do, which is have the collar already through there hanging, ready to go, so that you would then incorporate putting that strap on and then break it down to putting the collar on afterwards and do it that way. But if you want my little tip, is one of the best things you can do is you can get a little carabiner that goes onto that loop. And I found for a lot of owners, I'm like, you can put the carabiner on there and then clip the carabiner onto the collar. And that works quite well as an easier system to put it onto the dog more cleanly without having to fiddle around and manhandle the dog with the collar. So it just depends on your dog's collar, what style you've got. Some collars, you know, obviously you need the loop on the collar for putting the lead on, so you can't have the carabiner onto the loop of the collar, because otherwise when you walk them, it's going to pull the muzzle round, which isn't going to be beneficial for you guys, you know, or the dog. They're not going to like that. So the carabiner should go around the collar, or you can alternatively put what I call a marine chandlery loop on. So at the marine chandleries in town for like boats and things, they have the stainless steel loop rings, which you can put any onto a collar anywhere. And that then there's solid, you know, solid ring, and then you can clip onto that. And that slides and moves. So if the collar slips round, the ring will always stay under the chin, so it won't pull on the muzzle at any stage. That just gives you that security. So you can use that loop if you like, but put a carabiner on there to make it as simple and easy for you as possible. Okay, or you can just have the little carabiner on the dog's collar ready to go, so you can clip it onto the harness onto the muzzle when the muzzle is on. So there's a few different options there. Again, actually for safety, the general rule is to have not buckled collars. If you've got a dog that potentially is dangerous, it's better to have a collar with a buckle. Evidence shows that they're less likely to fail than some of the buckled collars. If it's a buckle collar with a locking mechanism on it, then they're actually pretty good. But I know some of the cheap collars, I've seen buckle collars fail, you know, and snap, which is never good in a fight situation. Say again. This is a buckle one. This one you can get clip versions as well. So I think Baskerville have now they've gone and put a clip in on some of them rather than the buckle version. But again, just be aware of that. Okay, just depends on the quality. I have also seen some really cheap Chinese knockoffs of these. They flex like you wouldn't believe. I've seen a few of them. They are not safe. I've seen, you know, a dog have it on and you can push it and it just condenses into their face and their teeth can still come out either side of the gaps. So don't be fooled by looking at some that look like this if they're not a Baskerville, because they're not as stiff. There is too much flex in them, and they won't do a good enough job. All right. So we'll just see how Luna's feeling. Do very last one. Good girl, Luna. Touch. Yes. Nice. Okay. She gets fed in. Yes. Yes. Okay. Gotta bring her up to me. Strap goes on. Yes. She pulls out. Take my hand away. Touch. Yes. Okay, so it goes through. Yes. She pulls out. I take my hand away. This is really important that I don't rush this next step. Okay, Touch. Yes. Okay. Again, arm goes round. Yes. She's still willing, even though my arm's gone round her. So she's bringing her nose back to the muzzle. Yes. Okay. She retracts her head. I pulled the strap away. She still needs to know she's got an opt-out, guys. Okay, that's really important. But then you can build onto that strap and that reward for the strap. The second you start trying to do up that strap, two things will happen in your behavior, which is, I guarantee, and this is something you need to be aware of, which is you'll hold your breath. Now, remember, all the time we've been doing this training, you're not holding your breath every time she puts the muzzle, her nose in the muzzle. You need to be very aware that they'll pick up on you holding your breath. When you hold your breath, that creates tension, which the dog picks up on, which makes them worry. So try and be as relaxed as you can through that process of putting the clip on or the buckle on, doing it up, and break it down into small bits, making sure you're marking and reinforcing very heavily during that time. We've got another question. Yeah, so muzzles that are different colors. She is a black dog. This is a black muzzle. Some people like, you know, it to be, oh, something's just come up on the screen. I don't know what it is, but some people like a muzzle that sort of blends into the dog so it's not obvious. Okay. And, you know, because they want to be conspicuous. You know, they're embarrassed that the hats, oh my God, my dog's got to wear a muzzle, which I think is a problem anyway. You shouldn't be embarrassed that your dog's got a muzzle on. I think it's great. If I see somebody walking with a muzzle on, I'm like, brilliant, good on them. That gives me an indication that that dog's got, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's because it's scavenger stuff or whether it's aggressive, it tells me that there's a reason, there's a purpose that's on. The black muzzles disappear. You can't always see them, and it can be a bit of an issue. The brightly coloured muzzles visually from distance are fabulous because from a long way away, you can see that there's something on the dog's face. So if you've got a light coloured dog, you know, these black muzzles are great. But if you've got a dark, you know, coloured dog like Luna, they disappear. So having a brightly coloured muzzle like the Boomers ones, which you can get them in luminous yellow, pink, purples, I mean, quite snazzy. I think it's great. It's making a feature out of them. Can be really good advertising for people to give you space. Remember, particularly for people with aggressive dogs, if you're out in public and you're muzzling your dog, these are an aid to creating distance from you and your dog. And for most people that I work with dogs that don't like people or other dogs, their biggest issue is people not keeping either their dog under control or marching up to their dog. Now, I've tested it, when you have dogs with muzzles on, people behave very differently. They suddenly are more aware and they suddenly realize, oh, I better call my dog. There's obviously an issue. And they make more of an attempt earlier rather than, oh, no, my dog's fine. They will take heed of that and they tend to notice more clearly. So a muzzle can be your best friend in the rehabilitation of dogs, particularly dogs that want to be given more space or dogs to leave them alone. It's not that the dog will leave them alone. The dog doesn't judge them and go, what's that funny thing on your face? Although I have seen that with a few dogs. It's more that your other owner will be more proactive to get their dog to come back. It's not reliable because a lot of people don't have their dogs under control. But it does mean you've got an early warning system. You can also, don't forget, things like muzzles are great advertising. There are other things that you can get. Brooke, if you could just go get the lead slips and the jacket. There are other things that you can do to advertise to help, you know, gain some space, you know, between your dog and either people or other dogs. So you can get useful tools that give a bit of forward warning. Brooke's just going to bring that in. Great, thanks, Brooke. So, you know, things like these jackets, dog reactive in training, you know, they're great. You may not want to advertise that you've got a reactive dog. And in all honesty, some people don't even know what you mean by that when you say you've got a reactive dog. But you can get these jackets. These are from Rocco & Co. You can get these jackets. We have a few for sale, but you can get these from Rocco & Co. And they can have all sorts of things written on them, like give me space, in training, please ignore me, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So you can get jackets, and then you can get the sleeves like this, where, you know, I need space, which go onto your lead and go through the lead. So if you imagine you're walking along and that is hanging off your lead, it is a bit of a more clear indication to people to, oh, there's something on that lead. I wonder what it is. Oh, I better give space. You know, this one is slightly different. Friendly, but may jump. It doesn't always have to be something aggressive. You just might just be training your dog to stop being so excitable. This one says nervous. You know, there's lots of different types. Anxious dog may overreact. And there's also some great jumpers out there. You know, do not approach. Look, that's a good one. Do not approach. There's lots of you know, jumpers out there as well, like from Ignore My Dog, which is a company that does some fabulous jumpers, which, you know, ask, you know, on your jumper, you know, give me space. I mean, one of the funny ones is, I think it's leave me alone, my dog can be a bit of a twat, which I think is hilarious. But anything that catches people's attention to give you more space is good. But remember, the muzzle is actually your ultimate safety in this, because if something ran up to you and you had an altercation, in the court of law, if you've got a muzzle on your dog, you would be fine. But if their dog, you know, created problems and it wasn't muzzled, they wouldn't be fine. So it's in your interest to muzzle train. But remember, we can use it in veterinary contexts. It may be, you know, you've got a dog that's got to have monthly injections because it's got arthritis. And over a period of time, it, you know, may feel that that's, you know, getting uncomfortable and things like that. You may find that over time you need to muzzle the dog, but there's lots of reasons for muzzling dogs. Another question, Brooke? Well, that's a good question, which is if you change your muzzle later on, then in actual fact, you'll find the transition much easier, because if you've done really good process of training on a muzzle before, transferring to a new one, you might go back a few steps just to reintroduce and make them comfortable with the smell and the feel of it. But actually, you'll probably progress quite quickly because your dog already has learned those steps. So actually, a lot of dogs, once you start switching around muzzles, are quite able to do that. The only thing I find is, you know, if I started to switch to this, I've got to coordinate myself slightly differently because it's got a different weight, it feels different, and I've got to think about where I put my food. So where the delivery of that food through the muzzle comes will be slightly different perhaps to that other one. So you just got to take that into account. Don't expect the dog to just be like, yep, I can wear all of them. Actually, to be fair, over a period of time, it's not a bad thing to practice on different muzzles, because the dog will learn to do it with all different types of things. So yes, it's not as difficult as you think. Another question, Brooke? Yes, so it's the brand Rocco & Co. They do lots of custom made jackets and lead slips. We got them here though. If you want some, you can order them from us, what we've got in stock, and then we can send them out to you. If you feel that you want one of those, just let us know, just get in touch and we can deliver those out to you. Another question, Brooke? Yeah, so we can put these onto our Facebook page so you can have a look at them, and then you can either purchase them off Facebook or you'll be able to purchase them off our website, allsortsdogtraining.co.nz. We'll put them on there for you so that you can access them if you need to. Okay, all of those. There is a few other brands of these sorts of things, but the reason I like the Rocco & Co ones is actually they're quite good, they're quite solid, they're quite robust, they seem to last quite well, and I like the variety of choice. Okay, but there are, you know, you've only got to Google, you know, reactive dog jackets and things like that, and you get all sorts of different ones out there. Some of them are luminous jackets, that's black with orange writing. There are other ones which, you know, are bright yellow and things like that to catch out, yeah, with time. Any last questions, anybody? We're getting there towards the end. If any of you got any other questions, now's the time to do it, put it forward. If not, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of things, but just if I can give you one bit of advice is just make them very short and sweet sessions. Finish with the dog still wanting to interact and do more. Be realistic in your expectations each time you do it, and think about those successive approximations, which is you know, just gradually getting the dog to do a little bit more with the muzzle. But remember, it's always on their terms. The key here is they have an opportunity to opt in and opt out, okay? If you've had a busy day at work, you're frustrated, this requires quite a lot of patience. My advice is do not train this on the day where you're already, you know, perhaps wrought and a bit frustrated. You need to have a calm mind and the patience to do this. But if you do it well for a good 3 weeks, you'll be surprised, you know, how quickly you can get your dog very positively muzzle trained without you even touching the dog. If you notice, at no point did I have to touch the dog, grapple the dog, you know, Luna, and make her do anything. It was all on her terms. And that is absolutely the key. This leads really well to all other type of cooperative handling. So if you've got dogs that are aggressive over handling, grooming, those sorts of things, and you want to learn more, you know, the stages of this is good foundation stuff. If you get this going, it will help accelerate that learning that you do with cooperative handling as well, how we introduce that sort of stuff. All right, but we'll be putting, this is our very first webinar, which is kind of exciting. We will be now pulling together other webinars. This one was free, purely because after Luna got attacked by another dog, I really wanted to get it out there to help as many people to learn how to muzzle their dogs, because that whole thing could have been avoided. Luna didn't need to get injured. That other dog, you know, now has a life more of restriction, which didn't need to happen had it had a muzzle on. And a lot of people's perceptions is that muzzling is cruel. It's not cruel. If you do it right, they're very happy to wear them. That's not a problem. The irony of that one was the lady whose dog attacked my dog. She thought muzzles were cruel, yet she had a shock collar on her dog. Go figure. Okay, so we'll leave it there, guys. Great to have you all join us. I hope you enjoyed the webinar and you got a lot out of that. Any questions, feel free to email us at allsortsdogtraining@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram to follow us, allsorts_dogtraining_NZ, and obviously on Facebook, Dog Training All Sorts. But please do sign up for any of our other webinars, and of course all our courses are there on our website at allsortsdogtraining.co.nz. Check them out. There's a whole load of behaviour courses along with fun activities to do with your dogs coming up, as well as general obedience courses. So hope to see you all again, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, guys. Bye.